There are forces of good and forces of evil at work in the world today. What are these forces? Who is responsible for the good? And who is responsible for the evil? Richard Shoff talks about current events which are rarely discussed by the mainstream media, events that affect us all. This program seeks to identify, to inform, and to equip the believer for what's ahead. Welcome to What in the World is Going On?
This is What in the World is Going On. I'm your host, Richard Shoff. Program is sponsored by Lincoln Log Homes. We are pro-Christian, pro-American, pro-life, pro-Second Amendment, here by the grace of God. Incidentally, we're also on YouTube. Many times it's this program, sometimes it's something else, but it's always available 24/7. YouTube, What in the World is Going On by Richard Shoff. As far as our sponsorship goes, we're running a special for all of our listeners. We can bring you a Lincoln Log kit of about 1,000 square feet for under $13,000. Call me personally, and I'll answer any questions you've got on it. I want to start a little different today. I want to warn all Christians, conservative, evangelical, fundamentalists, Pentecostals, charismatics, Trump supporters that are Bible-believing Christians. Chrislam founder Rick Warren is partnering with the mosques to teach that God and Allah are the same. And folks, this man is deceived. We can all be deceived, but I want you to be forewarned. I think that Rick Warren probably at one time was maybe straight on, but he's been deceived. Defying some of his fellow conservative Christian critics, one of the most prominent religious leaders in the country recently told several thousand American Muslims that the two largest faiths of the planet must work together to combat stereotypes and solve global problems. That, a quote from Rick Warren. Several years ago, when I was attending a local church, the pastor, who was a good pastor, personal friend, brought in the teachings of Rick Warren. Rick Warren, that's Purpose-Driven Life, the author of that. He brought in some teachings that I didn't agree with to grow the church attendance using Rick Warren's principles. And Rick wasn't on the straight and narrow there. He's gotten worse. He was teaching false doctrine. And these teachings by Rick Warren are fake. They're false. The followers of the Muslim faith and the Christian faith do not worship the same God. We do not worship the same Son. Allah is not the God of my Bible. Several years ago, I had an opportunity to go on a mission trip to Israel. Mission in the far, we weren't doing mission work. It was a mission for me to be there with a pastor friend of mine. While there, we visited both sites of the probable tombs of our Lord. One more likely than the other, according to some scholars that were with us. When I went into that tomb with the tourists, I looked around, and the tomb was empty. A few years later, I had the chance to revisit that tomb with my wife and our small son. You know what? The tomb was still empty. There wasn't any signs of a Jesus there, and the remains of Muhammad were not there. The tomb is empty, folks. Christians, do not be deceived. The false teachings by this deceived man are wrong. We're told that we can be deceived and to be careful. More on the article that came to me this past week. Rick Warren, first steps for calls for Muslims and Christians to recognize they worship the same God. Interfaith reconciliation has been proceeding for years between Muslims and more liberal-leaning mainline Protestant denominations. Over the years, those reporting on Rick Warren and Islam, people will tell us, but, quote, Pastor Warren denies any of this is true, end quote. To which we say, of course he does. And to a slight degree, he's correct. Most of the work that he's done to endear Islam and to bring it through the parachurch groups like King's Way, and he's not officially involved with it, but he does finance and nurtures these groups. And Amos 3:3 says, "Can two walk together except they be agreed?" Adolf Hitler never once visited any of his concentration camps, and only one time ever put anything in writing, so nothing could be traced back to him. But obviously he did know something about the concentration camps. And there is a video of Rick Warren giving what we call a speech that started the modern-day apostate Chrislam movement, and there's no denying that. Rick Warren builds a Jesus-less bridge to Muslims. From WorldNet Daily, the Reverend Rick Warren, pastor of Saddleback Church in Lake Forest and one of America's most influential Christian leaders, has embarked on an effort to heal divisions between the evangelical Christians and Muslims by partnering with Southern California mosques and proposing a set of theological principles that includes acknowledging that Christians and Muslims worship the same God. Listeners, that is false teachings. The effort, informally dubbed King's Way, caps years of outreach between Warren and Muslims. Warren has broken fasts at a Mission Viejo mosque. He's met with Muslim leaders. Yes, he's met with them here and abroad. He's addressed 8,000 Muslims at a national convention in Washington. Saddleback worshipers have invited Muslims to Christmas dinner and played interfaith soccer at a picnic in Irvine, California, attended by more than 300 people. The game pitted pastors and imams against teens from both faiths. This effort by this prominent Christian leader to bridge what polls show as a deep rift between Muslims and evangelical Christians culminated in December at a dinner at Saddleback Church. This dinner was attended by 300 Muslims and members of Saddleback's congregation. From WorldNet Daily again, at a recent Sunday church service, a major shift was announced by Pastor Rick Warren in his Saddleback Church in Orange County, California, that has many Christian leaders concerned. As Saddleback hosted his, quote, celebration of Jesus, end quote, attended by a number of Muslim communities in Southern California, something theologically significant happened at the dinner portion of the event. Incidentally, only a select number of people were invited to the dinner. A document 1 year in the making was presented which encourages Christians and Muslims to, quote, appreciate the similarities of our faith, end quote. What does this mean? Is it simply a way to reach out a helping hand to communities in Southern California, or is it something more serious? Saddleback Church in Orange County, California, home to Super Pastor Rick Warren. Remember, he's the one. He was at the Obama inauguration. He was the author of Purpose-Driven Life. He's joined forces with Southern California mosques to adopt a 3-step plan for ending enmity between evangelical Christians and Muslims. Defying some of his fellow Christians, conservative Christian critics, one of the most prominent religious leaders in the country told several thousand American Muslims that, quote, the two largest faiths on the planet must work together to combat stereotypes and solve global problems. Folks, that's not the teachings of my Bible. The plan first step calls for Muslim and Christians to recognize, quote, they worship the same God. Interfaith reconciliation has been proceeding for years between Muslims and more liberal-leaning mainline Protestant denominations. But this is the first such effort I've heard of an evangelical megachurch getting involved in this. Many evangelicals regard Islam as Christianity's number one enemy, and they do not all agree that the two faiths must worship the same God. Folks, Rick Warren is a false prophet. He's a wolf in lamb's clothing. He's an end-time deceiver. He may have been straight at one time. He may have done many good things for the cause of Christ. But fellow believers, right now he is deceived, and do not follow him into deception. We're told in our Bible to test the spirits. Believers, don't be deceived. Now to our embattled president. When do you think that Trump's going to say enough is enough? You know, Donald Trump, our president, is an army of one, at least in Washington. Sure, he has a base of deplorables, those who wait on mile-long lines to attend his rallies and those who voted for him 2 years ago. Yet, look at the forces arrayed against him. The U.S. media is on the warpath against Trump and his family. Coverage is at least 93% negative against him. I suspect it closer to 100%. It's rare to pick up a U.S. newspaper or to watch a television news, even much of Fox anymore, and see anything remotely positive about Trump. Great economic news is always shrouded as a black cloud, as is low unemployment, or strong economic growth, seen as racist, sexist, or simply a mirage. The deep state, Democrats and Republicans alike, are in lockstep trying to remove Trump from office. If only they were in similar agreement on securing our borders, or cutting regulations, or growing the economy, than they are against Trump. Makes me sick to see this Adam Schiff, who thinks Trump is heading to jail. Representative Maxine Waters agrees, saying, quote, President Donald Trump is a criminal and should be impeached. Listeners, as you know, it never ends. When does Trump say enough is enough? Enough can have two meanings here. One meaning is the junkyard dog being taught until it bares its teeth and attacks. Trump has that power as president. Assuming Uber and Horowitz have been doing more than playing board games with their teams of lawyers and investigators for the past year, there should be indictments and prosecutions, not to mention releasing FISA warrant applications and similar documents. From the Clinton Foundation to the Spygate scandal, from Hillary Clinton's emails to bogus FISA warrants, there's much for the junkyard dog to attack. When is enough? When does Trump go scorched earth through transparency against these conspiring to destroy him? Declassify the FISA warrants and expose the collaboration of his deep state enemies with foreign intelligence agencies. As the Clinton Foundation scandals became public, hammer away at tweets and public comments. If Trump's believe he's going down, he's going to bring half of Washington with him. Trump can simply release the hidden information and instruct his Justice Department to pursue any and all criminals and crimes that have been committed. Regardless of the political party of the perpetrators, that's not weaponizing of his administration, but instead simply the pursuit of justice and accountability. Let the chips fall where they may, across the political spectrum. This would be draining the swamp we were promised. Is it really? Despite assurances that pain is coming, the deep state swamp is in full bloom, folks. Yet the deplorables have Trump's back, with a 49% approval rating in the December 11th Rasmussen Daily Presidential Tracking Poll. The other, enough is for him personally. A billionaire businessman with a successful reality television show. Folks, he had it all. A comfortable lifestyle with his family, money, influence, popularity. He gave that up to make a difference for America and for the world. This is an excellent summary of what the Trump presidency is all about, why he was elected, and why the deep state is hell-bent on destroying him. For his efforts, he's ridiculed and scorned, not only by his political opponents, but by those in his own party. Never-Trumpers in Congress and the media who would be ecstatic if it were a President Bush or President Kasich or President Flake. If they were implementing everything that Trump's doing, they would be ecstatic. Yet Trump's conservative accomplishment mean nothing because he tweets and calls his detractors mean names. Well, folks, he's not one of them. He's not part of their elite club. He's not a dues-paying member of the establishment. So those who have been advocating for conservative policy their entire political careers have turned on a dime, throwing their conservatism to the wind, embracing Democrat policies instead because they don't like the messenger. Trump must have believed he'd be embraced by the GOP for his advancement of long-talked-about but never implemented policies. These included fair trade deals, lower taxes and regulations, border enforcement, economic growth, conservative judges. The more Trump does, the more the opposition grows, to the point that he's got few friends in Washington, even in his own party. Special Counsel Robert Mueller will undoubtedly cook up something for House Democrats to use for impeachment. For every line that Trump may have crossed, Obama, Clinton, and their minions crossed a parking lot full of lines, all without consequences. It's not simply two standards of justice. It's no justice at all. It's a Stalinistic justice, where the deep state makes up the rules as they go along, favoring themselves with kangaroo courts for their opponents. Conventional wisdom is that Senate Republicans would never vote to remove an impeached President Trump from office. Oh, really? How many will see obstruction of justice in Trump firing James Comey? This after his Deputy Attorney General recommended and his Attorney General agreed that he should do just that. Or his perfectly legitimate non-disclosure agreements with payments. So what if Trump personally paid Stormy Davis to keep quiet? Obama's campaign, not him personally, they paid Reverend Wright hush money during the 2008 campaign. And I don't recall any special counsel investigations or congressional hearings into campaign finance violations. What a daily drag for President Trump to pick up the newspaper or watch a bit of cable news and hear that constant drumbeat of how he's evil incarnate and about to be removed from office and sent to prison. Not simply disagreement over policy, but personal venom and hatred toward him and his family. How many of us could understand and withstand such an onslaught from all directions, day after day, without saying, enough is enough? Could you? The fact that Trump is still upbeat and optimistic, accomplishing more in a day than his predecessors did in a week, is beyond amazing to me. At some point, the human spirit breaks. How many slings, how many arrows will Trump take before he's had enough? His supporters wait, hoping and praying that he's able to turn the tables against the deep state. But the deep state isn't letting up. Mueller's jihad against the sitting president continues. Opposition research funded not by the Clinton campaign infused in GPS, but by you and me, the American taxpayer. When does Donald Trump say, enough is enough? I ask you, folks, isn't it time? And by the way, I found this very interesting. Jeffrey Lord on Newsmax TV asked, is Congress slush fund criminal? Political commentator Jeffrey Lord told Newsmax TV last Thursday, if Donald Trump is under fire for hush money payments made to women, several members of the Congress should be too. During an appearance on America Talks Live, Lord allured to the congressional fund that has paid out at least $17 million in settlements since it was set up in the 1990s. People who accuse members of Congress of harassment, which includes sexual harassment, they were the recipients of the money. We now realize that Congress itself, in the House of Representatives, had a $17 million slush fund to pay sexual harassment charges against various congressional staffers who charged members of Congress with this. This according to Jeffrey Lord. He says, and I quote, and there were non-disclosure agreements involved. In other words, members of the Congress not only did what Donald Trump did with private money, they did it with taxpayer money. And they're saying what he did is a felony? Folks, if it was any fairness here, we could be sending half of Congress to jail. That is, if they really believe in what they're saying. Trump's former attorney, Michael Cohen, he was sentenced to 3 years in prison this past week. What for? Tax evasion and other charges. He paid 2 women who said they had affairs with Trump in order for the stories to stay out of the news during the 2016 presidential campaign. Trumps have accused Trump of campaign finance violations because of the payments, which Trump denied. Most assuredly, the leadership of Congress knew it. So the question is, are we going to press for an indictment of Nancy Pelosi, and for that matter, I guess, Speaker Ryan too? Of course not, Lord noted. That's ridiculous. You see, this is what happens when you do political prosecutions. Now to you. Now to us, you and me. We need to prepare for President Trump to call upon us, the deplorables, the American citizens, to defend the Republic against the lawless deep state. Taking this from an article with Mike Adams of Natural News. He's blocked out of most places now, you know. The liberals don't like him. Even though Robert Mueller is repeatedly indicting former Trump associates for lying to the government, a process climb, James Comey just gave testimony to Congress in which he lied hundreds of times. Yet nothing's happened to James Comey. President Trump may soon be indicted for campaign finance violations. This, according to lawless Democrats. Yet Hillary Clinton pre-sold White House influence to foreign leaders for hundreds of millions of dollars on the assumption that Democrats had successfully stolen the 2016 election. Why are there no arrests of Clinton Foundation associates or Hillary Clinton herself? Well, Robert Mueller's entire appointment to special counsel was based on a lie and an illegally leaked memo from James Comey himself, who incidentally was a friend and associate of Robert Mueller, who served, Mueller did, as FBI director when Hillary Clinton's Uranium One scandal was deliberately swept under the rug, allowing U.S. uranium resources to be funneled to Russia and Iran. Yet somehow Mueller, Comey, Hillary Clinton, even Barack Obama, who carried out massive international money laundering to fly actual pallets of cash to the Iranian regime, are all apparently immune to scrutiny or prosecution. Only Trump associates are accused of crimes, while the real criminals of America, the deep state, appear to be immune to any prosecution or any investigation. The deep state Democrats, it turns out, have criminalized politics. No crimes committed by Democrats are investigated or prosecuted, yet Republicans are considered as criminals merely for engaging in the conservative pro-American politics. Read a couple of books I'll recommend to you. The Russian Hoax by Greg Jarrett or Spygate by Dan Bongino. These are astonishing overviews of the damning evidence against the deep state. Yes, you ask, how the deep state could be exposed and dismantled? Well, soon that situation may be turned on its head. President Trump is holding all the cards right now. He's sitting on mountains of currently classified evidence that reveal a pattern of deep, deliberate criminality and treason among some of these deep state operatives like Andrew McCabe, Peter Strzok, Comey, Clinton, Barack Obama, John Brennan, and others. At the right moment, President Trump could declassify and release a tsunami of once secret documents that reveal the truth about the FISA warrant fraud, Obama's abuse of government power, Hillary's treasonous corruption and selling of government influence, treason within the Department of Justice and the FBI, and so much more. This would be the most significant document dump in the history of our republic. It would reveal a pattern of astounding Christian criminality, deception, and lawlessness by these deep state operatives like Mueller, Comey, Obama, and Clinton. But there are enough honest people still remaining in the bureaucracy to call for the arrest and prosecution of these deep state criminals when the truth comes out, and they will show up, folks. Yes, they're probably there. The evidence is going to be damning. Huber and Horowitz, again, have not been idle. And now that the new Attorney General is on the way, the good people inside the FBI and DOJ, these who have been silenced for years, have an actionable channel to pursue with criminal indictments of bad actors who have committed numerous felony crimes, including treason. But regardless of what happens at the federal level, Trump has another card to play as a last resort if the deep state criminals somehow avoid arrest, and that's activating the citizens to defend the republic by confronting and defeating the deep state. How could Trump call upon the citizenry to defend against an illegal political coup run by lawless anti-American mafia? Well, President Trump, I'm sure, already is aware of this, but there are millions of patriotic citizens ready to aid in his defense. They're unlikely to act without authorization, however. To take action, they need to be granted presidential authority and encouragement. If activated by the president in defense of the nation, they would rally to Washington and assist Trump-appointed federal marshals or other law enforcement officials in locating and arresting deep state traitors. These are located throughout the bureaucracy, including those currently committing treason inside the FBI, DOJ, and Department of Homeland Security. Trump would merely need to reactivate all former federal officials and former military personnel, all of whom have sworn an oath to, quote, protect and defend the United States of America against all enemies, foreign and domestic, end quote. Listeners, that oath is a lifetime oath. It doesn't expire just because you retire or leave federal service. Further, the limitations of posse comitatus do not restrict the deployment of active duty military personnel on U.S. soil if defending the nation against enemy combatants operating within the United States. Thus, Trump could also deploy military police or even active duty military personnel to seek out and arrest enemy combatants who are operating inside the U.S. government. Why deep state traitors are enemy combatants? You ask that? Well, deep state traitors such as Mueller and Barack Obama can arguably be designated enemy combatants by the president. There's more than enough evidence to be declassified that clearly supports this designation. For example, Obama directly financed the nuclear weapons program of Iran, the world's #1 state sponsor of terrorism and a sworn enemy of the United States. Robert Mueller had a hand in funneling uranium to Iran through Russia, while launching the Russian hoax investigation to clear Hillary, while falsely accusing President Trump of almost the exact crimes that Democrats have committed. To be clear, I personally hope we never see blood spilled in any power struggle in the United States. The preferable solution to all of this is that the wheels of justice would expose the real criminals and the media would repeat the truth. They would make sure that the light of transparency on the crimes came out. These are the crimes of the Clintons, Obamas, and their underlings, who represent a political mafia deep state. But we all know that's not likely to happen. The media is run by the deep state. The wheels of justice are controlled by traitors. Every institution upon which reasonable people might rely to honor the rule of law has been compromised, even overrun by deep state traitors. Will President Trump call upon the citizenry to defend America against the deep state? Will the deep state successfully impeach or even assassinate the president before he can take such actions? Would an impeachment of Trump set off a citizens' revolt? These are important questions for us all to consider. I ask you why the activation of citizens to defend the Republic is legal and justified under the U.S. Constitution, and it may be needed in order to restore law and order to a nation where lawlessness and tyranny have run amok, and where the treasonous criminals remain in charge of nearly everything. The only way to treat this may be for the people to join forces with the president to take America back from those who actively seek to destroy it. How can you prepare yourself with what it may be coming? If President Trump unleashes against the deep state an outcome that seems inevitable before the 2020 election, you will need to be prepared for chaos nationwide as left-wing radical terrorist groups such as Antifa attempt to wage a civil war against patriotic Americans. Here are several websites that can help you prepare. Grab a pen, grab a pencil. I'm going to give them to you now. The first one, Survival News. This covers survival techniques, self-defense, bugging out, and moving. I repeat, survival.news. The next one, gear.news. This specifically focuses on survival gear, emergency food, emergency medicine. I repeat it, gear.news. Civilwar.news. This covers news of the coming Civil War and how to survive it. I'll repeat it, civilwar.news. Last but not least, folks, to be safe, pray for America, and be ready to defend your nation if called upon to do so. These are desperate times we're living in. I've never seen anything like it in my lifetime. I doubt if you have in yours. Again, I want to tell you I believe that God was instrumental through the prayers of Christians and a result of them in giving us Donald Trump as president. I think that he's given Trump the strength that he needs to go day by day against the constant harassment, against the constant arrows, bullets, rockets being launched against him. It's the prayers of the Christians that's sustaining our president. I urge you to continue with these prayers. I urge you to continue seeking God's face as to what we should do to preserve our republic. Next week, I want to just tell you a little bit. I've got an article I couldn't get through today. The Kavanaugh betrayal. This will really surprise you. It did me. Joseph Ferrara has pushed forth some information on Judge Kavanaugh that I didn't think we would see. When President Trump selected Brett Kavanaugh for the Supreme Court, he knew at least it was a very risky pick. But he won the hearts of conservatives because of the insanity of the opposition. I'm going to give you more on the real story on what we may be facing. It may have been a complete sellout. Again, folks, your prayers are needed.